Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. It's a Wednesday today, so I'm here today with our engineer, Mike Herzog. How's it going today, Mike?
Great, David, like clockwork every Wednesday. Glad to
Yep,
be here
yep,
again.
yep. Always happy to have you. It's definitely a different change from Bill, and we never know. I've actually got some special guests planned for sometime in the near future. It's just a matter of getting these people scheduled, but I've got a couple that I'd like to come on with you and a couple I'd like to come on with Bill. We've even got the CEO of Soriano Motori coming on, who they're a fourth generation motorcycle manufacturer that started out in Italy in 1903.
Wild.
But
Cool.
now they're only doing electric motorcycles.
Wow.
Yeah, but they're bespoke electric motorcycles. They're like
Mhm. Yeah.
$45,000. I was just talking to the guys, like, this is something you park in the garage with your Ferrari or Lamborghini, and we had a good hour-long chat, getting ready for this, and we had some mutual friends, and they introduced us, and so that was pretty decent. But for today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about some fun people have been having with charging stations. Um, an investment. Stellantis doing some investing in the EV space. How can China make EVs so cheap? One of my favorite topics ever on the show is sailing ships. For some reason, Bill and I get into sailing ships quite
Sailing ship.
often. Yeah, sailing
I-
ships.
I've seen a
Uh,
lot of EV or, electric vehicle and whatever it is, planes, cars, motorcycles, bikes, but I don't think I've seen sailing ships come up before. So I'm
no,
curious
no,
about
and then something about where EV sales are going right now. So, anyways, I'm going to start out with the topic of people having fun with charging stations. So, this one is kind of weird, and this may not be family friendly, but and there's no pictures. Okay, thank God. Um, so, EV chargers now are coming equipped with some vital health warnings. In a move that has left the public both enlightened and slightly bewildered, a local EV charging station is recently adding a sign that reads, "Do not insert into mouth or rectum." So my disappointment in humanity knows no lows. Okay, the bar
that.
is continuously set lower. Okay, um, this groundbreaking advisory has sparked widespread discussion about public safety, common sense, and the possible origins of a necessary clarification. So,
Uh,
sorry.
so I worked for utility forever and used to do the safety talks for preschools. And, number one, like don't stick anything in an outlet except a plug.
Right.
I never thought to extend it to don't stick the outlet in you. Never
Yeah.
never really came up.
Do not insert into mouth or rectum. Sources close to the charging station's management revealed that the sign was installed after an alarming rise in incidents where users apparently mistook the EV charger for either an advanced dental hygiene tool or the latest in personal wellness gadgets.
I mean, I want to know where they're getting the drugs, I guess, because they sound pretty good. If that seems like a good idea at some point in your life.
Yeah. It's 2024, one spokesperson said. People are curious, and sometimes that curiosity leads them to interesting choices.
No, I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. There's no electricity is not a new concept.
We even get some puns here. Electric shock therapy is one thing, but this is just a shocking misuse of technology. This is from a doctor. A doctor, I'm a wit. I don't know if that's a real name. It's IMA space WIT. I'm a wit.
I
I
don't
don't know if you say that just wrong. Does it sound like, idiot or I don't know, nitwit? I don't know. Head of the Preventative Obviousness Initiative. Oh God, what is that? Is there really a need for that?
know.
Um,
That's got to be a joke. That's got to be a joke.
yeah. Social media is abuzz with reactions ranging from disbelief to laughter. Some users have suggested that perhaps we should start putting similar warnings on other dangerous objects like hair dryers, power tools, and toasters. If you have to put a sign on it, the problem is bigger than just the charger. Let me see here if I can share this. Present. Yesterday, sharing was not working with my computer, but sharing is caring, right? All right. I don't know if you can read this here. It says, do not insert charging connection into mouth or rectum. It's on a charge point charger. So, anyway,
Oh, come on, Dave.
yes. This is probably some of the more, we've had news. This is some of the more interesting news. And folks out there watching, feel free to comment, or if you watch this later, we'd like to know what kind of unusual things you've seen people doing with electric devices, not necessarily with the charging station. Please do not go and violate a charging station, okay?
Every once in a while, if the phone connector's not working, the 5-volt phone connector, you give it a quick lick, stick it in there, maybe that helps, but not the 480-volt one.
I was pretty worried sometimes about when we discussed about how to make the Tesla superchargers charge faster, and we poured the water onto the rag and put it on top of the charging handle. Yeah, don't do this, folks, but apparently it works. If you're in a hot environment and you can plug it in, it fools the charging handle into charging your car faster, and because it cools down the handle. And that one seemed a little sketchy, but damn, this one, I don't know what to think. I really don't know.
I'm at a loss, because it's one of those, even if that's the new TikTok trend or whatever that, I mean, one person.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
I mean, that's
a lot of voltage, right?
That's kill you kind of voltage. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I saw that and I just felt, man, we had to cover that. I hope folks learn something from that. You might be disturbed. You might be worried about humanity.
You're right. That's
yes.
that's rock bottom. That's rock bottom.
Yeah, well, I'll have to let Bill know we covered that. Hopefully Bill will get a chance to see this, and he'll know what's going on there. But anyways, moving on. So I've got some news. Stellantis is investing over $406 million in Michigan plants for EVs and hybrids. Now, it has kind of seemed like, we hear talk, we see the Chevy Silverados and the Blazers and the Equinox and the Bolt and the Hummer and all that. And of course they also have Cadillacs, so they've got the Lyric and they're coming out with the Optique. But with Ford, we really only see the 3 vehicles. We see the Lightning, we see the Mach-E, which I wish they dropped the Mustang name for that. That's a different story. And then we see the what's the name of their van? Damn, I can't think of the Proline.
The Ford van.
Ooh, yeah, I can't think of what it's called. Anyways, but they've got the van, and we don't see much with Stellantis, okay, which of course is Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, some other. But they are putting some money into 3 facilities: Sterling Heights Assembly Plant, Warren Truck Assembly, and the Dundee Engine Plant. It'll support the production of the company's first ever electric pickup, the Ram 1500 REV, at the Sterling Heights facility. This is one that I've talked about before. I've been kind of excited about this vehicle coming out because it's a unique design. The plant will be the first in the U.S. to manufacture a fully electric vehicle for Stellantis, marking a significant milestone for the automaker. Now, let me see. While I go through this, we've actually even got some images here. This is what the new Dodge 1500 REV is supposed to look like. And this is a hybrid. We talked about this before. It's got a 150-mile battery, which is a lot of battery. Usually a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid has like 30 to 40 miles. Okay, it's not big. So 150 is a lot. And then it has a gas generator, which can extend the range all the way up to 690 miles. And where I feel this is a big plus is for contractors. So we've seen also where GM with their enormous 200 plus kilowatt hour batteries has been able to solve some towing issues with EVs, but at what cost? This may be a better transition. Okay, for many. I'm not saying that it's perfect for everybody, but it's got some great possibilities. Now, let's see. The company's allocating $235 million to Sterling Heights, where it'll produce both the Ram 1500 REV and a 2025 Ram 1500 Ram Charger, the range extended. So I'm assuming that one is just a hybrid.
Hybrid, yeah.
They're investing almost $100 million in the Warren truck plant to support the production of a future Jeep Wagoneer. Let's see. And $73 million towards the Dundee engine plant. It'll assemble, weld, and test battery trays for the STLA frame architecture beginning in, it'll start in 2024. Now, let's see what we've got here. Here is
an Jeep. I mean, I've heard nothing about this vehicle coming out with a new electric Jeep or anything along those lines. So yeah, I agree with you. It seems like it's a little late to the party from all the other announcements.
Well, I think Stellantis is a Belgian company. I think they're headquartered in Brussels. I'm not 100% on that, but they've got the Wagoneer S, and let's see what else they're looking at. We talked about the Ram REV. We can skip discussing that, but that looks nice.
Is that the cab of the Ram?
Yeah, it looks like this is it looks like it opens. Well, see, in this, it looks like we're missing the
half door or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on here, if it's going to be different on one side, or somehow if you look in this area right here on the image, maybe somehow they have just blocked that out for the image.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyways, and this came to us from Bill Pierce with EV Info. Let's see. But cool. It's interesting to see something from Stellantis. All right. Now let's talk about sailing ships. We actually talked a little bit about a different type of sailing ship yesterday. Let's see this one. But what's interesting about this is when you think about sailing ships, an old type of sailing ships, you think about all these people running up into the rigging and running out all the sails and how involved all that is. Well, technology has come a long ways. And while this particular article doesn't show this expanding, it's supposed to basically fold out into giant wings. Now, we've previously seen a product from Cargill that was like a 3-mast type setup that could automatically deploy. I mean, the captain could just press a button and deploy or not deploy the sails.
So is that attached to a tanker or giant cargo ship? Oh yeah.
Yeah. So cool. There's been a couple moves to do this, because your cargo ships really only sail at around like 8 knots normally.
Yeah, they go slow. Yeah,
they go really slow, and on wind, some of them can go up to 12. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you have to catch the wind going the right way, so that it's still probably going to be a free trip one way, and maybe not so the other. But in the olden days of sailing ships, they used to try to find ways to do like a triangle where they'd go, they'd sail and bring, they'd follow currents and they'd follow the wind. And it seemed to be like from North America to Europe worked better. And, so there was different things where, there's predictable trade winds. So I think that's part of it, and it will significantly reduce the carbon footprint of a lot of these sailing ships. But it is funny to see that.
I mean, it's passive. I mean, once you put it in once, and it has a fixed route, and it's going to be on the ocean for 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Right.
if it's a cheap ad and something you can put on there, I mean, I think that's a good application for it. It would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I wish they'd had more images on this story, but there really wasn't. But we've seen 2 or 3 attempts on this one. That we saw pictured was a 124-meter cargo ship, so that's 450, 460 feet, roughly, with its air wing energy harvesting sails, which promise to reduce fuel consumption and carbon emissions by up to 30%.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I buy
mean,
it. I mean it makes a ton of sense. You put a giant sail out on that thing.
yeah, it's funny though to think about how with modern tech, and you think about you have GPS navigation, all these other things, you could really optimize being in the right, following the wind,
Yep.
and saving all kinds of money on bunker fuel and things like that.
And
We were,
I don't know enough about sailing, but the first thing that would come to mind is what you mentioned before is what does that do to crewing of those cargo ships? Because I don't know if those cargo ships have large crews. I mean, I need
no
captain,
idea.
you need people to maintain, you need a couple of engineers, you need people to make repairs, but otherwise, it's not like you're actively sailing. It's big old engine, just
Right.
just
Well,
keep her steady.
well, think about that too. It would extend the lifetime of the engines by a
Yeah.
third or more. So, I mean, there's all kinds of cost savings to be added in that.
Mhm.
I think, but it's kind of neat to look at how modern technology can affect that. I mean, these seem like, we talk about this, like, should they go with hydrogen? Should they go with solid state batteries and giant solid state, electric batteries? We were talking about a different company yesterday that's already got some ships deployed that are doing sales, and they were saying, and they have a hybrid diesel electric engine otherwise, and they were saying that when the ship is fully wind powered, it turns the screws the opposite direction and it actually gives them battery power.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it builds up some battery power at the same time for
That's
the
cool.
diesel
Yeah,
electric.
because it's pulling
Yeah,
pulling it
so it was,
along.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of like Tesla and regenerative braking,
Mhm.
right? So kind of the same idea. But it's funny. It's just there's more and more companies that are seeming to realize that this is actually a good idea. It's funny to look at this because usually the thing gets like, oh yeah, let's go about the horse and buggy too, and it's like, well, we could put a couple horses out in front of our and Aptera would be a good one, right?
Yeah,
Aptera with the solar powered car, they could also have a horse
add
out in
animal
front
power to it.
pulling it, and
Yeah,
what does it looks like it could be something that could be pulled by a horse, right? As a joke, when we had the guy from Elf on here,
yeah. Mhm.
my editor, he put a picture of the elf being pulled by a horse. So we actually, on the thumbnail, it actually shows a
That's
horse
funny.
pulling the elf around, because it just looks like,
It looks like it could. It looks
yeah,
like
it
a
looks
little
like it's kind of
carriage.
appropriate for it. And the elf was one that if it's in sunlight, because it had a solar panel on the roof, and
Mhm.
it was an e-bike, essentially. It was an
Mhm.
e-bike that was in an enclosed shell,
Yep.
a three-wheeler, and it could go 10 miles per hour with a dead
Just on
battery and
solar.
not
Right,
pedaling.
yeah.
Yeah, just on solar.
I remember
So
that.
I thought that was kind of cool, but the horse wouldn't really be able to keep up. Yeah, but all right, let's move on to this story about China. So how can China make EVs that sell for less than $20,000? This is something that's kind of interesting, because you hear all these talks about tariffs, especially now. Both political parties
Mhm.
are realizing we need to tariff China, okay? And not there's some reasons China isn't necessarily um, they're a bad actor in the and they're very, let's just say, they're overly aggressive in some of their trade behaviors. They're constantly devaluing their own currency so that they can export more.
Mhm.
Okay, so you'll hear these terms about how the US dollar is really strong. Well, part of it is because China's intentionally making theirs weak so they can export more. And part of that, you see behavior in certain industries where somebody will come in and be ultra price competitive to put people out of business long enough to where they can eventually raise their prices and be profitable, right?
Monopolistic behavior. Like you take a
Right.
loss in that, and then you own the market, and then you can control the price point.
Well, in economics, this is kind of how China operates. Okay. So there's no question that China has its problems, right? But at the same time, over 50%, or in China, something like 60% of all new car sales are EVs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're almost like half of all the world EV sales. They're the largest car market in the world. More cars are sold in China than are in the whole EU. Okay. And more sold there than in the United States. And it's really hard to fathom as an American sometimes that we're not the center of the universe. Okay. And we're certainly not the leader in the EV space, with the exception of the fact that Tesla sells the best selling car in the world. Okay. And, it's hard to fathom to a certain degree. And where this comes in is we like to think that Ford, GM, and Chrysler, Stellantis, kind of are the center of the automotive universe, and they're getting pushed out of the rest of the world's auto industry by companies like BYD.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And BYD's bringing $10,000 cars to market. Now they're selling the price they sell in China is not the price they're selling them in other places, because when they sell them somewhere else, they've got destination charges. They've got tariffs. Almost every country tariffs cars or foreign goods.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. has always been one of the least tariffing countries. And, that there was something that came up on the debates last night, because one of the candidates wants to put almost a 20% tariff on everything that's imported to the United States. And, there's talk is that just putting a tax on Americans. And it's kind of an interesting argument one way or the other. Is it good for us or is it not good for us? If it's good for U.S. jobs, where is it good? What is the balance between, high paying jobs and,
Mm-hmm.
do we be self-sufficient?
It's the $20,000 car question. I mean, it's a good question, because I would say the more and more that enters into the public space, like I myself, even I from EVs from a technical standpoint, but now I understand the manufacturers and who's building what and how big this market actually is,
Mm-hmm.
and what that looks like. And I think it's a good question. How are they doing that when nobody else is? And is it labor? I mean, is it where they're acquiring materials? I'd have a hard time believing they're that much more efficient than we are in what we do. I mean, are they not paying investors? I don't know. I don't know how all of that kind of fits in, or is it state sponsored and they're taking a loss just to corner that market and understand what it means? So I think that's a really good question. What does the article offer any insight to what they're doing, or is it just, holy crap, we got to figure this out, or we're getting left in the dust?
Well, some of it is a little bit anecdotal. Reason is, so they interview a full-time driver who doubles as a local guide and takes visitors on a scenic route along the Yangtze River. Like many rideshare cars in China's megacities, this guy's name is Zhang. Zhang's car is an electric vehicle. His car is from BYD, but it's one of the lower range models with a basic interior and no air vents for back seats. The car is not perfect, but it is practical. He paid about the equivalent of about $18,000 US. And you think about that, the cheapest EV in the United States is currently at about 29,000. Mm-hmm. Now that's before rebates, okay, but it's about 29,000 on the list price. And he says he gets about 280 miles of range if I don't, but he can only get that if he doesn't turn on the air conditioning. Okay. Of course, if you care about appearances, you wouldn't use this car to pick up important clients for a big boss because the car looks cheap. But this car can fit 5 passengers comfortably and has a big trunk. But China has 100 electric vehicle brands. Think about that. That's crazy that there's that many brands. Now, one thing to think about, and I say this about India as well. So if you look at the United States versus China, we're 1/5 the population of China. So in theory, and you look at, electric vehicle brands in the United States. I mean, we've got obviously the big three. Okay, then we've got Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, Mullen, which we're going to talk about next. We've got, although you really can't buy a car they don't really make a car at Mullen. They only make commercial vehicles. You've got companies like Canoe, which also doesn't make, they really don't make anything. Okay.
No.
But Canoe's like a concept company that they spend all their money on private jet time. Yeah. This is one of the reasons why I say, we do talk about stock market news on here, and I'm usually crapping on the EV companies. Okay. There's been some good news. When we last had Adib on here, man, he really called when people needed to buy Lucid, because Lucid's done really well. He and I talk all the time still, and we're just like, man, we really need to get back to doing that show, because you have been spot on. People make money on your trades. Okay. And that's, that makes for a good show. But so Chinese EVs are effectively shut out of the US and Canada with our 100% tariffs. The EU wants to put tariffs on there, but they currently range between 9 to 36%. And this includes all electric cars made in China, including Teslas. Okay. Now, the problem with the EU is every time the EU tries to impose higher tariffs on Chinese cars, the Chinese come back with tariffs on European alcohol.
Oh.
And so some of the countries,
yeah,
it's just like this deal with France. France arrested the CEO of Telegram, because they didn't like stuff he was doing. And so he's a citizen of the UAE. UAE canceled a $20 billion defense contract with Rafael for buying fighter jets. Okay, $20 billion. Could you imagine being at that company and just or being the salesperson who landed that deal and find all of a sudden, you're getting a charge back. $20 billion.
Keep us afloat for the next decade. Yeah, it's no.
Yeah. And all because somebody thought that they didn't like how this one company was behaving. And it's just kind of crazy, isn't it? But so what's happening is,
microphone went down. There you go.
What's happening is China is fighting back on the tariffs, and they can't seem to do it quite as much with the United States. Okay, but they're able to do it with the EU, and so they're able to keep those prices down in the EU. And when I look at news like Volkswagen and Volvo, they don't have the customer demand because of some of these other Chinese companies coming into their market. But you got a few things. For starters, a lot of the batteries are produced in China.
Yeah.
The batteries are produced in China. The labor's done there in China. They have more localized access to the resources, so their cost of transportation to get the resources to the manufacturers is lower. And I think there's also issues of scale. So one of the things, Tesla here in the United States, so the most profitable car company per car in the world is Ferrari. And they make 6 figures for net profit for every car they sell. Okay. Number 2 is Tesla. Okay. Now this is interesting, because when we look at the other auto manufacturers in the United States, so that when they try to make EVs, the other 3, they all lose money, right?
Operating at a loss. Yeah. I mean,
Rivian and Lucid also lose money when they make it. Tesla is the only one of the US automakers makes money. Now, the Korean automakers, Kia, Hyundai, Genesis, they also make money when they sell EVs. They've figured it out. Now, I don't know how it's going to play out on their Georgia plant, but I know that this is how it's played out in Korea. Volvo has also figured out how to do it, but Volvo is producing their EVs in China.
Yeah.
Yes. And so there's some differences. There's some differences in how that is playing out.
And Okay.
Let
So it sounds like, I mean, it's a combination of all the things, and maybe, all of them are cumulatively going up to it. But at least from the gist of the article you were talking about, I mean, they call this car, it looks cheap. I mean, it looks cheap for what it is. Now, we've looked at those vehicles a lot, and I don't think they look too bad.
Mhm.
It's not a luxury sedan or even a nice sedan, but I mean, they're okay for what they are. And maybe that's what it is. Hey, we've figured out the sweet spot to make this cheap. It's going to look cheap. We're not going to put in back air vents, or anything like that add to the cost. And I wonder if they figured that out from the engineering standpoint and design, and like, here's a dozen little tiny things that have been added as features to cars over the years that if you took them away, would people really care? But it's added, hey, we don't have to run ducting, across the chassis of the vehicle now. It all sits right
Right.
in
When you get to the more expensive BYDs that are more along the lines of Tesla or nicer,
the Mhm.
they're really well equipped for the price that they're
Mhm.
offered at. Okay. But here is something they were interviewed a couple in this article. They interviewed a couple of BYD car assembly workers. Now, in the United States, if you're unionized and you're working for one of the
Mhm.
big three, you're probably making 60,000 plus as a assembly cars working 40 hours a week.
Working on the
Okay.
line. You got your shift, you got your spot in the line. Yep.
So this gentleman, well, when they were interviewing, he makes about the equivalent of about $990 a month. Okay, working 270 to 280 hours per month. So
Yeah.
that is
70 hours a week.
65 to 7, somewhere around 65 hours probably.
Mhm.
But he says he gets 1 to 2 days off per month. Per month. Okay. Oh yeah. So the article gave he makes equivalent of 360 an hour, 67 hours per week versus an average of 43 hours a week and $28 an hour for factory workers in the US.
In the US.
Yeah, so I mean a pretty significant
Oh, that's yeah.
difference
That's
in how
yeah.
that's playing out. But you also look at the cost of the batteries is cheaper over there. Okay,
Mhm.
and a lot of these companies manufacture, like BYD does their own battery
They have their own
manufacturing.
plant. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's say you're cutting 30% off the top of that too, and which is the most expensive component of the car.
Mhm.
You're really cutting down a lot. I mean, we've looked at some EVs that in reality were being sold for like 5,000 US. Okay, it was really a no frills vehicle, but it still sat four people,
Yeah.
and it still rolls down the road and could
It's
get a
still
license
going
plate.
50
And
miles an hour. It says four people. It still goes.
yeah,
You're out of the
yeah.
rain. I mean, yeah.
All right. So I want to get to um, my topic about Mullen. Okay. This is kind of a strange one because it's kind of a love-hate relationship I've got with Mullen Automotive. And I don't personally have any bad experience with Mullen, but I'd love to see comments from people and, try to leave out the swearing. But I'm just saying, if you see this during the show or afterwards, I'd really like to know what your opinions are on Mullen Automotive. And so I'm going to share this, and this is from my LinkedIn. And I'm friends with David Michery, who's the CEO on LinkedIn. And you know, I've personally gotten some hate over this. Okay, so
Mhm.
he posted this a few days ago. David did, and he's the CEO of Mullen Automotive, which trades on the stock market
Mhm.
as MULN. And he says fear is the biggest driver of hate. He shows one of their vans. They just recently, about a week ago, may have been 2 weeks ago, signed a deal with the UAE for $230 million worth of these vans, and they got an advance on it. Okay,
Mhm.
so they already have the capability to produce. Now, what's been unique about Mullen? Okay, they went out and they bought Nikola's battery technology division. Okay. They bought a whole lot of assets really cheap. They bought up a company called Electric Last Mile Solutions, which was a OTC pink sheet stock that went bankrupt. They bought all their assets out of bankruptcy. They bought a former GM Hummer plant from GM. They bought a company called Bollinger Motors. Okay. There's always there. Bollinger is making, I think it's class 4 vehicles, which look more like, oh, have you ever seen like the Isuzu moving trucks? They're kind
Oh
of
yeah, yeah.
small.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it looks like they're kind of
Something
about
like
that
that. Okay.
size. The class 3 vehicles are a little bigger than a tow truck.
Hmm.
Okay, there's also some kind of box truck, but they're
Yeah.
actually manufacturing this stuff. So they've got a plant in, I think Bollinger maybe in Indiana. I'm not 100% about that. But the Mullen Class 3 production is in Tunica, Mississippi, at what was another company that went belly
Yeah.
up,
And
and they acquired it.
acquired your
They acquired the
assets,
assets. So
right? And
Mullen acquired a lot of real estate assets in multiple states, and they got this stuff at a big discount. Okay.
mhm.
Well, here's the problem. So while they're actually producing EVs and they're getting them out to market, not at a great rate. Okay, they're not absolutely killing it, but I look at this thing with the $230 million. I'm going to assume they're going to profit about a third of that. That puts a lot of money into the company. The problem is they keep diluting the stock. And every time, apparently, like a couple days ago, they did another reverse split. It was something like the fourth or fifth reverse split. People talk about fourth reverse split in the last 18 months, and he's awarding himself with performance bonuses. But he says this up here: fear is the biggest driver of hate. Well, all of the people on the LinkedIn posts, oh my God, this
I'm
is
going
just
after the stock
oh,
decisions.
yeah, let's not forget all the dilution. By the way, it's 18 cents at the close yesterday. How are you not even ashamed of yourself? Cowards have no shame. Dilution is the biggest driver of hate. I went from, this one's sad. I went from owning 20,000 shares. Next time I looked, I had 2 shares at an average cost of $5,000 each. Like, what the fuck? I can laugh about it now, but I'm dead inside truly. From $97,000 to $1.72 at the close of business today, from 100,000 shares to 9. When will
And
you actually speak to the retail investment community? We're owed an explanation and the opportunity to ask you questions about your moves as CEO and how you become a multimillionaire while we are down 99.99%. Mullen sucks. So this guy put in $97,000. It's now worth $1.72. Okay, I really don't know what to say about this. I mean, I'd love to get David Michery on the show, talk to him about this, but I really just feel like my comment section would just be massacred. I really just don't know what to think about this. Mullen is one of those companies that I think if somebody stepped in and bought them up right now, I mean, they're super cheap and they have so many assets. It would make sense for somebody who's better capitalized
yeah,
and could do a better job of running this.
of running the actual operation and producing
Yeah.
vehicles. Yeah, fit them under an umbrella somewhere. Acquire the assets, acquire the design. I mean, and just go make some vehicles.
Now, when they talk about the dilution, what happens is they keep going out and raising more money and
Mhm.
selling more shares,
Selling more
and
shares.
these
Yeah.
new investors are getting those shares at a preferred rate.
Mhm.
So let's say the stock is at 17 cents, they may be buying the stock at 8 cents. Okay, but they may be buying, uh, so many millions of shares that it's putting, let's say, $50 million into the company, and so it's massively diluting the value for the current
For everybody
shareholders.
else. Yeah, who's already
And
invested.
um, let's see, I asked you if you were afraid or fearful of having a conversation with me to discuss the Mullen press release you issued since 2019 that never happened or never existed. Same for every comment you made that never happened or existed. I only ask you about your own published words. Mullen is doing another reverse split on Monday, the 9th of September, which was 2 days ago, and
Mhm.
issuing 350 million new shares. Total destruction of shareholder value. and people asking for, the SEC to get involved,
Huge.
scam alert. But I'm not sure I don't think he's doing anything illegal. It's just,
I don't know.
I
I don't
would
know.
call it immoral. A few other things, but I'd love to know what, people's thoughts are. I don't know if the Twitter comments come through because, so many of our folks are watching from Twitter, and I'm sure that they're watching because of my comments on Mullen. But it's weird that they keep having more and more business coming in. Now they do a good job of setting out press releases. I get all kinds of press releases from them every time they get approved for something new. Like Bollinger Motors got approved for something called CARB, which allows them to be eligible for some major rebates in California. I mean, you can buy some of their vehicles in California and get the vehicle like for 1/3 of retail.
Wow.
After when you combine the federal and state rebates, it's insane how much some of the commercial rebate programs are. But I just don't get how this can keep being financially destroyed. Tends to stoke a lot of hate. I mean, it just kind of goes on and on. There is not anybody that came to defend giving it to the shareholders.
Well, it's a tough one. I mean, that's a tough position to be in, and I appreciate where you're approaching this from, where it's like, kind of like the company and what they're doing, and somebody scoop them up, but on the same hand, it's like
you buy the stock up, put the current guy out of his misery, and let somebody new take over. And like I said, they have contracts in place.
They're getting contracts, they have the infrastructure, they have plan. I mean, it's kind of run with it, and just go make some cars.
And I'm going to be fair. Okay, so one of the things when somebody is in the private equity space or venture capital space, you've got somebody who's got a great idea, right? I couldn't tell you how many unbelievable unicorn ideas I see every year, okay, from people that are out raising money. I mean, some of the stuff is just, they're incredible ideas, but you have to have a few things. One, somebody's got to sell it, right? There's got to be people out there waiting for it, okay? Well, the other thing is, do you believe that the leadership of the company can execute? Okay. Now, David Misery has made money as the CEO. There's no question he's made money. And people have put money into this company and they've basically gotten screwed. But there keeps being what seems like a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. But I think it's going to take somebody else stepping in, taking over the company, giving stockholders some glimmer of hope. But like the guy that went from 97,000 to $1.72, I mean, a new CEO comes in. Well, his $1.72 might be worth $4 now.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's a big increase in the stock, but it's not a big increase for him. No, and I don't know, what to think about that, because they really need somebody who could come in, and because for the price of, I've reviewed information on Mold a bunch of them. So normally you have a book value and the market value of the company. Their book value is way above their market cap. Yeah, because they own all those assets I was talking about.
Actual physical assets.
Yeah. So they really, there's some safety if you were a lender for the company, because you'd have all these hard assets.
They have a lot.
They have legitimate hard assets, but
that's what everything. It sounds like with this, it at least keeps ratcheting up in the right direction. Hey, we're producing cars. We're buying more assets. It's not like all of this money is just disappearing into a bonus. I mean, I'm sure some of it is, but it's one of those, we're acquiring assets and we're producing, we're gaining contracts. So it seems like it's one of those, it's not going to disappear because there's so much physical stuff behind it. But on the same hand, it's, geez Louise, like
I have a friend
taking
that
and just produce.
I have a wealthy friend I've known for a long time that is just a absolute raging alcoholic to the point where he basically passes out. He drinks till he, goes to sleep kind of thing each day. And it's kind of like, hey, dude, but while he's still, until he is inebriated for the day, he can make millions every year. Okay, he's that, he's that talented. But then, he goes into the drunken stupor, but he's not managing any assets for anybody else. You know what I mean? And in this case, it almost feels like, what? How does this keep happening? So anyways, but I'd love to see people's comments on this, because Mullen, and hear what some of people's own stories are, because it is really weird, because I've supported this company a number of times because I like what they're doing in the space, but man, they are just trashing the people who've supported them. And I just, that wow, part is just, downright wild. I don't, I don't know how that goes on, and I'm sure it's not unique to the EV space. Okay, I see this. I've seen this about plenty of other companies and different things going on in the stock market over the years, but this one really takes the cake. All right, so my last one is about, our EV sales really slowing down, and this is a constant topic because people always pick some data point about EVs, and so Tesla, a while back, stopped being the dominant player in the market. They actually fell below 50% of all US EV sales to like 49%. And people were talking about how it's the death of Tesla, right?
End road, and your days are numbered, and yeah.
But anyways, is the EV market slowing down or just hitting a speed bump? The EV market isn't crashing, cooling, or falling, but it's driving to a bit of a transition. Headlines say otherwise. Yeah, those might need a fact check. EV sales are still climbing. They're just not skyrocketing like they were in the early days. Once you've hit a certain speed, you don't need to keep flooring it. Now, Volvo hits the brakes. Volvo was originally saying everything was going to be fully electric by 2030. Now they're saying 90% of sales will be fully electric or plug-in hybrids by 2030, and 10% will be mild hybrids, because people still like having an engine around. Now, a mild hybrid, so the Corvette just came out, or Chevy just came out with a hybrid Corvette, but it is a mild hybrid. It doesn't even increase the gas mileage. It's simply a way to increase your 0 to 60 time.
Okay.
One of my friends has an AMG Mercedes that's a mild hybrid. The hybrid part is strictly to improve 0 to 60 performance. Okay, so it doesn't do anything for gas mileage. Here's Grandpa Simpson chasing a turtle that has his dentures. So the turtle has his dentures in its mouth, and he's trying to catch up. So that's EV sales slowing down there.
I think there's two, and it's mathematical functions. I mean, you can still increase or stay constant, but your rate of change goes down. Like, it's not
right.
skyrocketing, but it's still steady in an increase. And I think that's what a lot of this is. Well, and so much of this you and I talk about every week, and I'm sure you see all the other articles too. It's so many of them are not news. It's a single data point. It's somebody trying to manufacture an art. Oh, well, on the third Tuesday of every November, did you know EV sales slump a little bit?
Right.
I think that's an indicator that the entire market's going to fall apart. I don't know. I think all the major indicators are sales are still increasing. I mean, they're not skyrocketing, and that's partially due to the mathematical volume function. When there's more of them, it takes more to have that significant change when you're talking about from a percentage standpoint.
So for the first half of 2024, EV sales were up 22%. But last year in 23, they were up 35%. So it's definitely slowed down the
Oh,
growth.
yeah.
Yeah. What's Let's see what's happening with charging infrastructure. This chicken and egg problem of the EV world. Charging stations aren't going up as fast as EV sales. Volvo has hit pause and pushing out more electric models because it's tough to sell a car. People don't have anywhere to charge it. Europe in particular is feeling this pinch as government incentives have started to disappear faster than that one model on a clearance sale. Now, one of the things when we normally think about EVs, we think about charging it at home, right? But there's so many people that don't have access to a place to charge at home. They legitimately need a public charging station. And it's probably a lot more common in Europe than it is in the United States.
Yeah,
So,
it's all of that. I think it's US 80% of charging is done at home. But if you live in multifamily housing, or even, you have a house, but you might not have a dedicated parking spot. I mean, you might park on the street, which I think is the case in a lot of those. So I see that with the charging infrastructure, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm still having a disconnect in my head that it's, we need all of this infrastructure and places to charge before this will pick up. And it's, I don't
yeah,
know.
I don't see that as being a big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's more just education, and the more people that have them are out there driving say, oh no, like I don't charge at a public spot. I just go park in my garage every day.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna help quite a bit too.
And by the way, this article comes to us from Automotive State of the Union, which they send me news almost every day. Let's see. If EV sales are up, why do we hear about slumps? EV sales are still climbing. Gas car sales are actually falling. The real slump is in gas-powered vehicles, which are down 25% since 2017. But is anybody talking about that? So in the last 7 years, gas-powered cars have dropped 25%. One area, diesel-powered cars. So I think EVs have pretty much replaced all the diesel-powered cars, which were popular in Europe, but it's really taken a hit. And I think EVs have for some reason have fit better into that category of people because the people thought that they were doing something there already.
Volkswagen didn't help with that one either.
Oh God, yeah. With
that kind of killed their at least stateside diesel plan.
Right. Let's see here. China is leading the charge, making up 60% of global EV sales. Europe is facing a slight cooling off period. US EV sales have jumped 12% in the first half of 24. Slower ride in the future. EV sales aren't crashing, they're growing. The challenge ahead is about balancing consumer expectations, infrastructure development, and keeping that market profitable. Automakers aren't hitting the panic button, they're just adjusting the game plan. So much of, I've heard this before about people talking about it's education, and so many people still just don't really understand the role EVs play and where they're better and where they're not. And they think that they're bad in all these areas. And, if you live in an apartment, you're going to have a tough time. Okay. Unless they've already made arrangements for you to be able to charge at home. But if you live in a house, it's a pretty easy adjustment. But I see all these things. It's like, 46% of people are going to their next that own EVs, their next car is going to be a gas car. Well, I don't know if you ever saw that one, but that one was one of people who were at dealerships to buy another car. 46% of them were going to buy a gas car. Okay. So this doesn't factor any of the people that bought Teslas.
Yeah.
Okay. This only factored people who were shopping at dealerships, right? And the thing was that number had previously been like 70 something percent a couple of years ago, and it dropped to 46.
That's interesting. That's an interesting data point right there, because you see that as a standalone and go, whoa, no, if it's decreasing and it doesn't include the number one selling car in the world that doesn't follow a dealership model.
Well, there's more to it. That didn't even necessarily say the people were getting rid of their EV. It just said they were buying their next car they were buying, 46% would be a gas car. Well, the United States.
You know what? I fall into that. my last car purchase was an EV. The next car I purchase is going to be a gas powered car.
Yeah.
Probably I'll look for a hybrid, or even a plug-in hybrid potentially. But no,
Good luck finding one.
Yeah,
especially if you buy used. Good luck.
Yeah, no, that's one of the delays. But no, we need a gas powered car. Yeah, we pack up the kids and go for a family road trip. Like I want a gas powered car to travel cross country in. I guess I would fall in that 46%.
Well, the average EV owner in the United States owns 2.5 cars, and only one of them is an EV. So that's an interesting statistic all of its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I can quote a lot of statistics when I see people who hate on EVs. Hey, I can tell you what to hate on EVs. It sucks for apartments, and most people that own them also own 1.5 gas cars. So there's other things to it, and it's really funny the data points people want to talk about. Fires. It's like, have you ever actually seen one on fire? It's so funny the things people choose to pick as their battles. Anyways, Mike, we actually went a little over on time today. Appreciate you being on here today. And folks, appreciate all of you watching. And like I said, folks, comment. I really like to see what people really think about Mullen without swearing. The different platforms will just, your comments will just disappear if you have, foul language in them. You just have to kind of tone that down. You can put asterisks and
you can be creative.
Yeah, you can be creative. You just can't actually type out the curse words.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, folks, have a great day. Thanks again.